Welcome to the Multicultural Mindset Broadcast. Your host is Dr. Laverne H. Collins, a licensed professional counselor, award-winning trainer, and keynote speaker. Dr. Collins is the author of Overlooked: Counselor Insights for the Unspoken Issues in Black American Life. Dr. Collins has also been a featured monthly columnist in the American Counseling Association's Counseling Today magazine with her Honoring Diversity column. Now, here's Dr. Collins.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Multicultural Mindset. I'm Laverne Collins, and my guest today is Dr. Michael Hannon. Now, Michael is one of the foremost, in my mind, scholars on fatherhood, Black fatherhood, and mental health. And as you know, if you've been following this month, putting a lot of emphasis, this is the month when we tend to have emotions come up, either positive or negative, about dads. So I am so pleased to have you with us today. Dr. Michael Hannon is an associate professor of counseling at Montclair State University, over 20 years of counseling experience, and he is the author of the book entitled Black Fathering and Mental Health: Black Fathers' Narratives on Raising Their Children Across the Family Life Cycle. But that's not all that he does. He does so much more, published in so many journals. It's a privilege to have a scholar and a researcher on this topic, such as Dr. Michael Hannon. So, Dr. Hannon, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, Dr. Collins, it's a pleasure. I appreciate those warm and kind words, and always happy to spend time with you and hopefully contribute to the important work you continue to do for mental health professionals across the country and globally. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. I know you are busy, and I appreciate your time. We'll dive right in,
Sure.
because there's so much to say, so many things to explore that I believe have not been adequately explored in context. And I'm going to mention one other thing, that your book on Black fathering and mental health, to me, is one of a kind,
Wow. Thank you.
because you brought together the men whom I consider to be the movers and shakers, and many of them, there are others, but so many of the movers and shakers in our profession, the Black men in our
Yeah.
profession, to talk about their stories of fatherhood and mental health. And they bring amazing insights, as do you. But you've also got experience with writing and publishing about culturally relevant milestones in the lives of Black children and adolescents and Black fathers, engagement with them, the whole talk. You're just doing it. You are out there doing the work. Tell me first how you got drawn into that. What was the draw?
Mm.
How did you get into this?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I appreciate it. I think my attraction to and really curiosity about Black fathers and Black men's mental health and well-being is really, it derives from my own personal experience. I know you know this, and people who have the privilege to do research or have terminal degrees or things like that, many times their research interests are born out of a me search. They're doing a search about themselves and their own experiences. And so
Mhm.
when I went to Penn State for my doctoral degree, I was very much interested in the psychosocial aspects of autism on Black families.
Mhm.
My wife and I, we have two children, two adult children now, which is wild. But one of whom is autistic. Our son is autistic. He's a 21-year-old autistic man. Um, and I was very much interested in the sibling dynamic between my children, because there was a point in time when our autistic son did not he was non-speaking, right? It took him quite a while to develop expressive language. And so watching and observing and trying to pay attention to their communication patterns when his expressive language wasn't quite developed yet was very both fascinating. It was distressing. It was concerning. So all like the range of emotions. And so when I had the privilege to go back to graduate school for my doctorate degree, I was like, oh, I know what I'm studying. And over the course of our studies, as you well know, things crystallize. And my dissertation committee were like, yeah, Mike, you should probably be asking some questions about the dads. The sibling relationship is worthwhile and relevant, but there may be a gap that you can fill by asking about Black fathers' experience. And so my dissertation, I think I can still say my dissertation, it was the first and maybe still be the only one about Black fathers of autistic people, and how they make meaning of their identity, their parenthood, their fatherhood, and things like that. So that's what drew me. And then, taking one step back and thinking about the broader context of Black fatherhood, particularly in this country, it just raised some curiosities for me. And I've been privileged to be able to ask questions and systematically investigate them and get answers. And then in the publishing process, be like, yo, this is what I learned. Here's what these really smart men, these really insightful men, these really open and transparent men have shared with me. And they've given me permission to share my understandings with whoever wants to read about them, or whoever wants to listen to a podcast. So.
Well, I say thank you for allowing your experience to be a seed that is certainly carrying a great harvest.
Wow. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So, what have you found? You've been at this a while now. What have you found about these, the milestones, the socialization process that Black fathers engage in with children and, young children and adolescent and even adult children? I know your interest really spans the life spectrum.
The lifespan, yeah. No, it's really interesting. And I think if in an attempt to simplify, and I don't want to reduce it, but what I've learned is that, and we've heard this before. I ain't dropping no new knowledge in this respect, but Black fathers' identity and sense of well-being sometimes and many times can be attached to their ability to do four things: to procreate, right? My ability to make babies with a person, right? My ability to protect my children and my family from harm, to provide for their well-being, whether that's financially, materially, emotionally, and then prepare them for success. So these got these 4 P's: procreate, protect, provide, and prepare. And Black fathers' abilities, I think we might be able to make an argument that says cross culturally, but certainly I'm interested in Black fathers and fathers across the African diaspora. Their ability to do those things, one, influences their sense of self, their sense of agency. And in many cases, I would assert respectfully that their ability to do those things is a criteria for potential judgment from other folks in the community or external in the community. The women in our lives, the children in our lives, the people who we work with, and maybe even and spend time socially and leisurely with. And so we think about like a lifespan perspective. Your audience, mental health professionals and other folks in and outside of the field, we all know lifespan development, and there are certain markers that indicate healthy normative development. Kids being able to develop expressive language, developing healthy relationships and things like that. Well, I would say like there are some very specific things that are unique to Black folks that may not be cross-culturally applied, but very much influence the quality of life that we have as community. And as fathers, being able to do those 4 things, those 4 P's, right? So if we think about even early childhood, right? Early childhood education moments when our children are in schools. Now, I'm not talking about the relationship between you and the other parent of the child. I'm talking about you as dad going into school and having to resolve an issue, a misunderstanding, and Black men having to make decisions about how they present themselves as a consequence of stereotypes that folks may have about Black men. And so I've literally had people talk about, there was a brother in my dissertation study who had an autistic daughter and said he can't, and he's a big man, like physically intimidated. He's a former professional football player. So he stands over 6 feet tall, and the shoulders about as wide as this room. But he talked about jokingly, but very seriously, he said, I have to make sure I am the help me understand man, not the angry Black man. So I lead with, if there's a problem and we have a difference of opinion, he's asking the question of the school personnel, help me understand why you didn't get this. Help me understand why you didn't respond to my child's needs this way. Because if he doesn't ask that question, then he runs the risk of being perceived as the angry Black man. And so that's just kind of one example. And I'll use another one quickly, and that is the thing that many people talk about that's more in the national discourse now is it is the talk. It
Mm-hmm.
is the talk that parents and caregivers and parent figures, not just
Mm-hmm.
biological fathers, but
Mm-hmm.
adults who care about children,
Mm-hmm.
that Black caregivers and particularly Black fathers, they are having to have conversations with their adolescents and maybe even preteens about what it means to engage with and interface with authority figures, because they run the risk literally of a misunderstanding
Yeah.
turning into a fatality, depending on who the authority figure is and what
Yeah.
power
Yeah.
and influence they yield.
Yeah.
That ain't happening in every family. And that's no shot to people who aren't Black, right? Like, but that ain't happening to every family. But
Mm-hmm.
there are
Mm-hmm.
specific considerations that are cultural
Mm-hmm.
milestones in the context of Black families and
Mm-hmm.
for Black fathers as a consequence that are that are happening for us and that can influence our mental health and well-being and our
Mm-hmm.
perspective and our ability to manage our emotions based on the very real and tangible um, consequences of being
Mm-hmm.
Black and having Black children and being hopefully a person who helps protect, provide, and prepare them. Right. So I hope that
I
makes
love
sense.
those four P's:
Yeah.
procreate, protect, provide, prepare.
Yeah.
And prepare. Oh my goodness, the weight of that, even the weight of protecting, is what you're speaking about
Sure.
as being very different based on stat the status, the ascribed status of that puts you in a category of marginalization or privilege.
Sure.
That's it.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
what do you say about the four P's? Um, well, let me say where I'm going to start. Let's start with procreate, because of all the stereotypes about Black men procreating and then stopping, and that's all they do. And one of the things that I do, one of the ways that I advocate for Black men whenever I need to, is when I hear a woman who's been hurt by someone, or two, even, or three,
Sure.
make generalizing statements. I will be real quick to say, I hear you're hurt, but let me invite you not to generalize. Let
Hmm.
me invite you to speak about your hurt, your pain, your experience, how your expectations were not met in your experience, rather than buying into the I wish Black men would. Da, da, da,
Yeah.
da, da, da. How do you advise anyone to respond in a way that helps break the stereotype?
Yeah. I'll say something directly. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just empirically false that Black fathers are not engaged with their children, right?
Mm-hmm.
So depending on how bad you want
Mm-hmm.
to know, and this is when Ibram Kendi talks about the true nature of a critical thinker, it is the
Mm-hmm.
ability, it's one's openness and courage, quite honestly, to learn new information that may challenge what they thought existed before and be open to the prospect of a perspective shift, right? That's the nature of being a critical thinker. So when people talk about absentee Black fathers, first of all, every community has absentee Black fathers. So
Every community.
that's not specific to Black men. And if you really want to study it, Black fathers are among, if not the most engaged group
Engaged.
of fathers with their
Yeah.
children
And
across
that
racial
part of
and
the
ethnic
story
groups.
doesn't get told.
If you go back to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, their report in 2013, I want to say, I don't know that they've published anything since then, but their study on how fathers engage with their children, Black fathers were the most engaged by way of bathing, by way of reading, by way of care, more than white men, more than Asian men, more than Latinx men. And so it's just empirically false. I
Mm-hmm.
think what happens is because because we as um America as influenced by Christianity, and this is no shot because I came up in a Christian home. I think we
Mm-hmm.
deify marriage. And so
Yes.
there's a national trend that people aren't getting married like they used to for a variety
And
of
the
reasons.
assumption is that dads are not involved
And that's it.
just because the mom and dad are not married. And that's
Right.
false. That's really false. I've read the research. That's
Right.
not true.
So if we
It's
go
not
back
true.
to 1965, Doc, and we think about the influence of the Moynihan Report
Moynihan Report. You,
that
oh
that
my
that
gosh, go ahead.
pathologizes Black families
Yes.
and makes a case. They say the reason the Black families are not thriving is in part because Black fathers aren't around. And we like,
Turn around.
nah, like so to answer your question, it's really the willingness and the openness to be open to different, new, and challenging information that is empirically validated, right? We not making no, this ain't no pie in the sky. This is like, nah, this is what research tells us. Now,
Hmm.
if you want to critique the research, cool.
Hmm.
But find me the evidence that tells you that Black fathers are absentee at large. They are
Yeah.
engaged with their children.
Yep.
They love their
Yep.
children. They are engaged with their children, whether they are
Yep.
connected to or in relationship with, in romantic relationship with
Yeah.
the other parent, if that's the
Yeah.
relationship makeup. So
Yeah.
I hope
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I reference that Moynihan report frequently
Yeah.
because what saddens me, not just that the data was really misrepresented, but that not only was that the dominant narrative that was told in other cultures, Black people bought into it as well.
Yep.
We began to believe that the problem with the Black family was it was crumbling and men were absent and single mothers weren't able if I'm not mistaken, the percentage point difference between the such experiences in white homes and Black homes was minuscule.
Yeah.
It was like 1% or some minor. I don't want to misquote exactly, but I remember that the difference was minuscule,
Yeah.
and it was set up as there's this major disparity here, and this is the problem. And again, it's okay, so that's America's problem, really, and the numbers don't even tell the truth. I mean, the narrative about the
Right.
numbers, we're not telling the truth. So many Black fathers are living in the shadow still of the cloud of the Moynihan report
Yep.
and the damage that it's done. Um, how do you find Black fathers overcoming that in real spaces?
Yeah, I think this is where the value of group work is super, super important, Doc. And I've
Mhm.
been privileged to run support groups and psychotherapy groups for Black fathers and father figures,
Mhm.
and the utility of group work in whatever context, support, psychotherapy, if you're addressing some real conditions with which men may be living, for them to be in community with each other is arguably among the most transformative and powerful pathways to healing that I found. Right. So if I'm in a room, if I'm running a group with Black fathers who are sharing their narratives, the ways that they learned about fatherhood, the ways that they've tripped up in their fatherhood, the ways that they've succeeded in their fatherhood, and this one person is sharing and this other person is saying like, hey, I had the same experience. Oh, my dad did things like that with me too. Or my dad really wasn't connected with me. And the ability to learn from each other in community is really, really powerful. Um,
Mhm.
I try to situate when I'm working with Black father clients in individual work and individual therapy. I try to situate these four P's and talk about how do these resonate with you? Do you have
Mhm.
other ideas about what your role is,
Mhm.
or what you need to be doing for the benefit and the health of and the well-being of your children? And in many ways, this really, really resonates, especially with Black fathers who are adoptive fathers and have to overcome the stigma of not being able to procreate in the narrow ways that we consider.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so these are the ways I think group work is really, really powerful and can continue to be a catalyst for Black fathers and father figures healing as a consequence of maybe not so great experiences in their past, or they're carrying wounds and potential trauma as a consequence of them coming up in a world in many ways can be anti-Black. So I think group work is one way to help facilitate healing.
I love what you're doing. I love what you're
Yeah,
doing.
thanks so much.
How can how can helpers and counselors help provide support? How can they advocate? What do you advise? Because I honestly hear, unfortunately, counselors of any race um,
Hmm.
contributing to that deficit narrative, that
Yeah,
inadequate message, or the message, I should say, of inadequacy.
yeah,
We're still doing that. And not everybody, but there's still a lot of places where that narrative is has been so ingrained and
hmm,
believed without challenge.
right. No, I think you're speaking directly to it, Doc. I think for those of us, and again, here's where the notion of critical studies, whether it's critical race, whether it's Black crit, whether it's Lat crit, I think as mental health professionals, helpers, healers, we always have to posture ourselves as learners, right? How can I be, listen, how can I be the right kind of help if I'm not willing to learn what is helpful, right? It sounds super intuitive. It sounds really, really easy. Um, but we as helpers, mental health professionals, healers, we can very much drink the juice of being so arrogant in our practice that we think we have nothing to learn. And so one way we help is to posture ourselves as learners to learn about the experiences of the clients that are sitting across from us, whether we're in the same space or whether we're doing telemental health work. And the second way I think is as we posture ourselves as learners, we have to be fairly grounded in our theoretical orientation. What do we believe about about the nature of human development and the
Mhm.
things that stand in the way of therapeutic growth and progress? If that's Black
Mhm.
psychology, cool. If that's liberation psychology, cool. If that's Black existentialism, that's cool. If that's relational cultural theory, if that's reality
Mhm.
therapy and choice theory, whatever it is, we're going to bring that to the session and then be flexible enough to say, even though these theories and these interventions, these theories and these frameworks ground my clinical work, I'm still open enough to finding and pulling from other theories for interventions that may be most helpful. I may be an existentialist,
Mhm.
but this client really needs
Mhm.
solution focused interventions, right?
Mhm.
I may be a Black psychologist in theoretical framework, but this client needs reality therapy and choice theory interventions, and being willing to do that for the sake of the client. um, it really speaks to being person centered but systems oriented, right?
That's
and
good.
and and
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
the,
Ooh.
two things can exist at the same time, right? I can show up for this client and apply all of the tenets of a Rogerian um, therapist or a
Mhm.
Rogerian, but at the same time, I can't be so focused individually that I don't think about the systems that are
The
influencing
systems.
the presentation of these symptoms that are in session. So it's the posturing ourselves as learners to learn about our clients, and then being willing to, one, be committed to our theoretical or clinical framework, but being open to borrowing from others that are most helpful for our clients. I think those are two ways that stand out to me immediately with respect to what I typically say. My friends will hear me say all the time, being the right kind of help. You know,
Yeah.
you don't want to be the wrong kind of help. You want to be the right kind of help. And I
The
think those are
right kind
two
of help.
ways we can be the right kind of help, or even just be better help. So.
You have said a mouthful right there because I am always I run a multicultural masterclass where I help train experienced counselors to
Hmm.
be a continuing education, approved continuing education trainer as I am, because I want to talk about boots on the ground. I want to see more boots on the ground doing
Hmm. Hmm.
sharing this kind of content in continuing education context. All that to say that one of the things that honestly, I think will be our growing edge in our profession as licensed counselors will be for us to look more at context than we have been encouraged to do. And I'll be the first one to say counseling is the newer profession amongst the behavioral health specializations.
Yes.
And I know there's this sometimes tension between social workers and counselors, but social workers as a whole understand community and context and are willing to look at that more, taught to look at that more readily in my
Hmm.
experience, than counselors. And that's not everybody, but I cannot overemphasize. I'm always telling people, you're not looking at a person until you're seeing that person in context. You've got to have the ecological systems view. You
Yep.
have to, you have to, you have to, you have to think about intersecting identities. You have
Yep.
to think about marginalization and privilege. You have to think about everything that person brings, which means you also have to think about historical intergenerational race-based trauma and all the ways that that presents. And
Yeah. Yeah.
especially, I say, and that, not to say that it's more important with Black men than with Black women or women of color, but please don't overlook it when you're working with or considering the needs of one of the most historically oppressed demographic in these United States. And I think there's enough empirical and anecdotal support to say that Black men have had a hard way to go when you compare them to any other demographic
Yeah.
historically. So you
Yeah.
have to, it's imperative that you not just see the person in front of you. You haven't seen them until you have really seen them
Hmm. Hmm.
in the context of everything that it means to be who they are. And
Hmm.
I'm a woman who has great respect and appreciation for our Black men. Um, I don't know what it is. I know what it is to be Black, but I don't know what it is to be a Black man. I never will.
Hmm.
But I can say that for the fathers, thank you. For the
Hmm.
fathers who are holding it down, for the ones who fear that they're not holding it down, for the ones who are judged for maybe doing the best they can and it's still not good enough.
Hmm.
And for those who are so wounded and bruised that maybe they are leaving a lot of things undone. I don't know. That's not mine to judge, but I greatly respect the work that you are doing
Hmm.
in affirming and validating and strengthening and teaching not just men, but families,
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
on these topics. So thank you. Is there anything else you would like to say to the folks who are watching or listening today?
Yeah. I'll say two things. I'll say three things. One, as I said at the top of our time, I appreciate your kind words and the opportunity to share and engage with your audience and just to connect with you. It's valuable for me, and I'm better as a consequence of it. The second thing I'll say is this, you've given a shout out about my book, and I do have a second one that I'm currently working on that hopefully will be published before 2025 is up, and it's called Protect, Provide, and Prepare: Black Fatherhood Code in Family and Community. And while I didn't speak to the procreation part of those four P's, it's those three P's that I'm focusing on. And I think there's a remix that needs to be. And this, am I thinking about this and talking to Black fathers and being able to investigate or study this stuff empirically? Um, I think there's a remix that we need to acknowledge, and this is something I shared at a conference where I presented. In the same way we all go to conferences for professional development. And in the first of the three P's, the protect, provide, and prepare, those are important, obviously. But I think in pushing myself to think more broadly, those speak to like baseline, right? Protect
Mm,
protect your
mm,
family from harm, right? Prepare them. Uh, Protect your family from harm. Provide for their material and emotional well-being and success, and then prepare them for success beyond your immediate care.
mhm,
And I think what I'm encouraging Black fathers to do as I engage with them is not just protect them from harm, but what does it mean to protect their Black joy?
Oh, yes,
Right?
yes.
Like, so my wife and I, at the request of Sister Renee Mays, Dr. Renee Mays, who's over out in Arizona, super dope researcher, does a lot of has a school counseling background and is researching and sharing a lot about what it means to cultivate Black joy in educational spaces. When she asked us to write this article a little while ago about how we protected our son's Black autistic joy as a younger child. And so I'm saying this to say, let's continue to protect our children and our families and communities from harm as Black fathers and father figures, but let's be just as diligent as protecting their Black joy, right? As committed as you are to letting no harm come their way, right? This is me coming from my church background, my Christian church, letting no harm come their way, being just as committed to protecting their Black joy, and anything that stands in the way of it, it got to go, right? And
Mm,
being unapologetic about it. So moving from protection
that's
from harm
good.
to protecting Black joy, providing obviously for their emotional well-being, I mean their financial and material well-being and security, but also providing for their racial well-being. What does it mean for Black fathers and father figures to cultivate and coordinate experiences, facilitate experiences where our children, our Black children, and they could be Black and Latino, they could be multiracial, they could be biracial, but if they have a Black identity, what does it mean to create and facilitate experiences where they are we are providing for their racial well-being, that as they walk through the halls of their school, they walk to their first jobs, that they are secure in their Blackness, and they're proud of their Blackness, and they're proud of how their hair looks, they're proud of how their music sounds, they're proud of how their language talks, and providing for their racial well-being, racial and cultural well-being. Then the last thing I'll say with this, prepare, yes, we want to prepare them for success. What does it mean for our kids to be successful outside of our immediate care as Black fathers? But I'm working personally and professionally to prepare an anti-Black world for Black joy, right?
Mm,
I'm going out here and telling all of y'all that when my children come out here, y'all better be ready for them to be healthy, for them to be
mm.
whole, for them to be unapologetic, for them to be caring, and for them to be committed to Black people's wellness, to all people's wellness, of course,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
with a particular focus on Black people's wellness, considering how things and systems have uprooted and disrupted our wellness over time. And so this is kind of like the remix of the protect, provide, and
Oh,
prepare to do better, not do better, but do differently, and to think beyond just the standard and the minimum of taking care of our families. So I hope that makes sense.
oh, this book is gonna be good. This is good stuff. You know what I envision? I envision sort of a an ethnocentric Black version of like a Maslow's hierarchy. Like these are layers.
Doc, and what I would tell you is there are enough people who have critiqued Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because some people will say that he, say what you want, borrowed, co-opted from a very indigenous model and
Right.
framework of
Hmm.
well-being.
Hmm.
So I don't know that too much in detail, but I totally agree, and we can reasonably imagine that Maslow may have used or borrowed some tenets of things that existed before his mind envisioned that specific hierarchy
Hmm.
of needs. And that's not to
Hmm.
that's not to undermine it, because it's important. It
No.
is a very
Yeah.
valuable baseline, but
Yeah. But
you
when
know,
you talk about those the higher level provision and
mhm.
protection, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I love this. I so appreciate your work.
Oh,
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you and all that you're doing as well.
Well, thanks for all that you are giving the world. And if someone wants to consult with you,
Sure.
Um, I will have your contact information on the credits, the last slide or so. We'll make sure that we post that there so people can reach you, and any information you want to put about your book or other services you provide, it's going to be on the last slide. Thank you again so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak to us. It's been a pleasure to have you. And to all the people who are listening, I know that you have been enriched by this amazing conversation with this amazing professional, scholar, researcher, lecturer, author, and father,
Yeah.
a husband and father.
Yep.
So he's brought everything he has today. And I hope that you might have to watch this a couple times because this was rich and it's okay. Keep whatever you want to do. Watch as many times as you need to. Just remember to like and subscribe to the podcast, The Multicultural Mindset, and keep practicing with humility, clinical and cultural sensitivity, and a multicultural mindset. Bye for now.